the international desk, senior reporter, international reporter Khayelihle Khumalo here to open up the diary for the coming week. Kaya, let's start with Russia-Ukraine. That's been a subject of many attempts at a truce, a ceasefire of sorts. South Africa in the mix, even in those processes. Tell me what we are watching.
Well, certainly, Chilesi, is a very big moment. I mean, we saw that telephonic call between President Ramaphosa and also his Russian counterpart, whether we're talking about this issue, the conflict, and we know the far-reaching impact in the continent when it comes to food security because of the wheat that is being sourced from Russia and Ukraine. But also apart from that, it really just shows the very significant role South Africa has been playing as part of the Africa Peace Initiative. We saw that all-important visit by President Ramaphosa alongside the leaders going to Russia and Ukraine. So South Africa is being really kept abreast with all these developments, what has been happening with the Trump administration in the US, and really just constantly for South Africa to be involved as well.
Do you think we appreciate enough the import of it all, Kaya? Because it actually dawned on me in the week before the Alaska summit that both leaders actually spoke to President Ramaphosa at various points, or both administrations at least.
Well, that's right, Tulis, especially because for South Africa, that's non-aligned position. I think it really gives Pretoria an opportunity to speak out to Zelensky, to reach out to Putin, and for the leaders really to have confidence that South Africa is really keen to see this conflict being resolved.
Yeah. And lastly, Kaya, on this aspect, I think an underreported aspect, and I don't know, maybe you'll be covering it, the role South Africa is playing in one particular issue that has to do with the return of Ukrainian children that have been taken by Russia, right?
Very much so, Tilis, especially because that's really at the core. You know that the warrant of arrest against President Putin, that's one of the major issues around the children. But also they do understand of South Africa's diplomacy and its approach, especially it's a very quite critical issue. It involves children, so very vulnerable members in this conflict.
Yeah. Let's turn to the United Nations General Assembly. I didn't even realize, Kaya, that the year has advanced because it's like clockwork. You can plan when it will happen. We're almost there now.
Well, very much so, Tilis, especially because for this year, it comes at a very important time for the UN, 8 years of the existence of the institution, but also it comes at a time where multilateralism is under siege. There's a rise of, populism and all sorts of really just bizarre politics. So it's a very important time for the UN, soul-searching time for this key institution, but also the issues of climate change, issues of conflicts, and many other pressing global issues will really take center stage, Tilis, especially because also the sustainable development goals. You know that 2030 is approaching for Mr. Guterres, who is the Secretary General of the UN. It's a very critical issue that's very close to his heart.
But I wonder how much room is left to consider those issues, Kaya. And I know it's like a week-long or 2 weeks-long program at the UN. But how much room is left when you have so much conflict that is taking place around the world? That is almost a pressing issue. We go into it with the situation in Gaza deteriorating even further.
Very much so, Tilis, especially also the role of the UN itself. A lot of people are saying this institution is there in terms of maintaining the international peace. You look at the UNSC, the Security Council, the states of paralysis, the P5, how they used a veto, and really just putting a lot of issues really to the fore, but also a lot of issues not being resolved because certain countries not really just finding each other, the lack of consensus. I think it's quite a very important time for the UN really to go through itself and say, what can it really do in terms of maintaining global peace?
And lastly, Kaya, I know I'm dwelling on this quite a bit. It's because I'm enjoying it. The other thing I think we'll be watching, those countries that have said, we will recognize the state of Palestine by September, unless we see X, Y, and Z change on the ground in Israel, in Gaza.
A very interesting one, Tulasiza, because we know that for the longest time, when you talk about the current situation in Gaza, Palestine at large, the issue of the two-state solution has always been that issue that has been really just raised, but also just a paradigm shift from so many countries in Europe, recognizing that if you want to resolve that conflict, the issue of statehood of Palestine, the self-determination should really be at the core in terms of making sure that you see long-lasting peace in that part of the world.
The clock is ticking then towards that all-important General Assembly. Back with news on the African continent. Talk to me about the efforts in Congo, in the DRC, around that conflict. To be honest with you, I've not touched base with that story for quite some time. What's the latest?
Well, the latest, is obviously they're quite a very protracted conflict, and it's really always been there on the agenda. Whether you're looking at the SADC meeting, the recently concluded meeting in Madagascar, it was there where the leaders were talking about the security in the DRC. So Qatar now has really positioned itself as a key mediator in terms of finding a solution. But there are so many challenges because M23 ever so often will pull out from these talks, and then it really defeats the whole purpose of having this particular mission in terms of making sure that we see DRC really being stable, because it's a very key country in the context of sub-Saharan Africa, fairly rich country, but because of the destabilization, because of the hostilities, a lot of impediments really facing the DRC.
All right, Kaya, thank you for coming through. That's Khayelihle Khumalo from our international desk, who has been tracking and also opening up her diary for us, his diary for us for the coming week.